Mob Entertainment finally released Poppy Playtime
Chapter fucking 5.
And to say it's one of the most controversial chapters yet is putting it lightly. The release has been met with such a mixed response that it has resulted in people trying to cancel Markiplier, so obviously a big can of soup has been spilled and we gotta find out what's up with that. Now, because we're going to be having a big old chat about the new chapter, there are going to be spoilers, so if you don't want to get spoiled, I have other videos on my channel for you to watch if you want to check them out and save this one to your watch list for later. Anyhow, I'm Peku and welcome to my channel. I've been a fan of Poppy Playtime since Chapter 3 was released. I know, I'm not a veteran, but I did get to experience the game, the community, and the atmosphere at its absolute peak during the release of Chapter 3, and I'm honestly really glad that I joined the fandom. I've known of Poppy Playtime since it came out, but I didn't really pay much mind to it. The first chapter released in 2021, and that was just a really busy time for me, so it wasn't really on my priority list. Plus, most of my childhood was consumed by Star Stable Online and FNAF anyways. But before we jump in, we gotta give the guys who don't know what Poppy Playtime is a little bit of a background check. So for those of you who might not know, Poppy Playtime is a mascot horror game set in 2005, where you play as an ex-employee of Playtime Co., which is a company that was started in the 1930s and manufactured toys. It is also important to note that Playtime Co. has also doubled as an orphanage called Playcare, and the orphans there were used for experiments. These experiments failed in various stages of the process, but the successful experiments resulted in orphans being turned into giant toys. And after receiving a mysterious package, it's all up to you, as the main character, to dive into the financially impossible depths of Playtime Co. The way that this video is going to work is I'm going to give my perspective, I'm going to talk about a few of the designs, and then at the end we're going to go through Markiplier's review of Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, just because that review has caused so much discourse, and I agree and disagree with a lot of the things he said, and I really want to be able to unpack it as someone who has experienced the chapter for myself. I want to start by saying, and get your tomatoes ready, but I've never played a Poppy Playtime chapter for myself, so when I make commentary and opinions, emphasis on opinions, please take them with a chunk of salt, because opinions are not gospel. I enjoy Poppy Playtime for its lore, the story, and the character designs. I enjoy this franchise as a creative person and as a collector of merch. And I do genuinely love the game, but I don't enjoy it as a gamer because I just don't want to. And I shouldn't have to play it to be considered a member of the community, and that does go for everybody else too. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself though. I did actually enjoy the chapter. It's not my favourite one, and I definitely have my gripes with it, but I did enjoy it. I liked the story, although I do feel that the story didn't move forward very far, but that could just be me. The reveal of the prototype was really cool, and the characters in this chapter did indeed grow on me. Especially Chum. There's just something so lovable in those big autistic eyes of his. I wasn't sold on Giblet, I think it's pronounced, and Lily when the chapter started, but over time I warmed up to their personalities, and Lily Lovebraid's story really won me over. It reminded me why I enjoy the storytelling in the game so much. I also really enjoyed certain angles they'd choose to tell their story during cutscenes. Like, hell, the scene where you and Giblet are hiding from the prototype and all you see is his legs hitting the ground in front of you, and he kills I think it was a wrong side animal in front of you. That was really, really scary, and one of my absolute favorites is where Chum picks you up and hides you in his mouth and you just see the silhouette of the prototype through the gaps in his teeth. When I saw that, I was like, oh my god, it's so cool. I really appreciated the creativity of those scenes and how well they turned out. I think the most powerful scene in the whole game, though, is when you go into the memory machine thing-majig, I don't really remember what it's called, and you relive the memories of Huggy Wuggy through his perspective. The whole sequence from the character waking up to the shape game and then the dancing game where you have to put the other toys in the bad toy box was so captivating and interesting. And really sad when when you pick up the smiling critter and they literally beat at your hand so you let them go because they don't want to be put into the toy box. Like I said at the start, the fandom was very divided over this chapter for multiple reasons. The story, the character writing, designs, the length of the chapter, mechanics, and, God forbid,
The chase sequences.
Lily Lovebraids and the Prototype were the characters that have had the most debate about their designs in Chapter 5, and I do understand where people are coming from. Lily Lovebraids had a sneaky little leg and hair reveal a little while before the chapter came out, and that's quite literally all you saw of her. So Mob did leave a lot of room for artists and fans to cook up a good dish or two regarding how they thought she would look. When she was finally fully revealed though, she received a lot of hate for her design. I believe some of the popular critiques were that she doesn't look scary and that she looks too PG or friendly for a horror game, and these critiques were thrown around a lot for this chapter, especially when the trailer came out and we got to look at some of the environmental design. I do agree that she isn't very scary looking, but for me that kind of makes sense. Most of these toys existed to protect and appeal to the children held in playcare and labs, so it makes sense that they're not all going to look as monstrous as Huggy Wuggy. I do understand though that Lily didn't actually serve a role that protects or comforts the children when she's a toy, so that stance is as valid as you consider it to be. I don't mind how her design looks. I love that they went for another purple character, and the concept of her using her hair for movement and attacks is really cool. I like the accents of the yellow stars in her design, and while she may not have a very interesting silhouette, in my opinion, it does stand out against the cast of the game. I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, though, is that she doesn't look like what we would expect from a Poppy Playtime character, and I placed the blame for that solely on her eyes. The reason why she looks so out of place design-wise to me is over the course of the game, we've been introduced to lots of characters with really big pupils. It's become sort of a design staple at this point, whether that was intentional or not. Huggy, Kissy, PJ Pugapillow, Yarnaby, the Smiling and Nightmare Critters, Boxy Boo, Bunzo, the Longlegs family, heck, even the Ollie phone, Miss Delight, and some of their earlier experiments all follow the design convention of either having huge pupils, entirely blacked out scleras, or blacked out eyes in general. Because so many of the characters' eyes fall into this category, they've become such a signature of the Poppy Playtime style. Lily Lovebraid's eyes don't follow any of these conventions, and I think that's why she stands out so much compared to the rest of the characters from past chapters. One thing I did notice though is that she suits the environment of the factory really well, and her voice actor does such an amazing job. I was really skeptical of her character when I saw her outside of the game, but once I saw her in-game, a lot of those nitpicks didn't really matter anymore. She was such a pleasure to see on screen. I loved her dialogue, again, massive props to her voice actor, and again, I found myself really immersed in her story. One critique I have is that her death didn't really have a wow factor to it. I felt like it was very unceremonious, for lack of a better word, or dramatic. I don't really know how to explain it, but it lacked a shock factor compared to some of the deaths we've seen on screen, like Doey or Yarnaby, where Yarnaby's literally burned alive in front of you. This could be a case of her coming back in a later chapter like Huggy, or her hair continuing to be a nuisance thanks to that one cutout. Or maybe I'm just so used to toys dying in every chapter that I've just come completely desensitized to any of their deaths mattering at all. I really liked Chum. There wasn't a whole lot to his character, I don't think, but I liked his design, and his wonky eyes reminded me of Kinger, especially because of his Patrick star-shaped head. His cutout is adorable, and he gets bonus points because of the mouth hiding scene, because that was really cool, and will probably be one of my most favorite scenes from the game as a whole. And on to Giblet. Giblet has been another controversial one. I think he falls into the same kryptonite as Lily. He doesn't have that iconic eye, and while he does have a very similar stature and silhouette to a smiling critter, When I was watching playthroughs, specifically Sheep Rampage's one, that was the first one I watched, I couldn't actually figure out what Giblet was supposed to be at first until you start uncovering clues in-game. Another note to make is that when we were first introduced to Giblet, I thought he was just in a really bad physical state, that his fur had been singed off or falling out, or ripped out as a form of torture dealt by the prototype. But then I really looked at his design and considered his environment. It is heavily implied, if not shouted from the rooftops, that Giblet suffered a punishment at the hands of the prototype. I also noticed that his fur juts out at the seams where his patches of fur or cloth or whatever you want to call it are sewn together, like when you're sewing fur inside out. Combine that and the fact that where you first meet him is infested by inside animals, and it finally occurred to me that he has been cut into pieces and sewn back together inside out. I can't remember the name of the creator. I think it's Poppy Theory. They did a really amazing video talking about Giblet and just the character as a whole and explaining his existence and his role in the chapter. So after you finish that one, definitely check it out. I'll leave it in the description. With all that said, the biggest catalyst for the discourse isn't actually the designs. It's the creators versus not creators battle we've had the first week of release. Now, I want to start this off by saying I don't hate Markiplier. I don't hate any of the creators that have reviewed Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 negatively, because that's their opinion, and at the end of the day, them not liking a game just means I have one less stream to watch. I am going to be a little bit more negative in this section just because I'm going to be completely dissecting Markiplier's review, but I do just want to say I don't hate Markiplier. I think he's a wonderful person. I enjoy his content. I'm just saying this, like all of these things, from an objective standpoint on the outside, just to clear up what I think he was talking about in his review, because when he gave this review and he said certain things that he said, half of it I was sitting there like, bro, that didn't happen in the game. I don't really know what you're talking about. I just wanted to preface, I don't hate him. I actually quite like him as a person. Anyways, Markiplier played
Chapter fucking 5.
and to say he wasn't pleased with the chapter is an understatement. I came across his reaction on TikTok, and yeah, I was a little taken aback by it, so I watched his playthrough to see what all the fuss was about. In his reaction at the end of his playthrough, he really didn't spare any expense when it came to the critique, and most of what he had said was already said by most of the fandom anyway. I think what rubbed people the wrong way was how he said things, the way he said things. He was very aggravated when he gave his review, and it comes through very clearly. Markiplier had made some people so mad with his review that some people have even called him childish, arrogant, and entitled in his own comment sections. While it was mostly people in comment sections say that stuff about Markiplier, Jacksepticeye released his playthrough and review, and those accusations were also pointed in his direction too, but it's not the case for either creators. Markiplier made a point of saying that the main story was confusing and he didn't understand it. Poppy Playtime's horror really does stem from its environment and the lore behind it, so if you don't know what's going on, you really do lose one of the best experiences this franchise has to offer. While watching playthroughs, I personally felt the story was consistent, even though I don't think we uncovered anything truly earth-shattering or any lore rewriting information other than the reveal of the prototype and obviously Poppy's face being cracked. The way we acquired all of the lore and all of the information in this chapter was still the same as it has always been in any of the prior chapters. You find the collectibles, you play the tapes, explore the game and the environment, participate in the story, and if you want to be extra, you engage with the community and theorycraft. This formula has been the same throughout all 5 of the chapters, but I think the main reason Markiplier didn't enjoy the story this chapter is because in his playthrough he quite literally said he remembers nothing about the main story. So he really did shoot himself in the foot there. But he has also been occupied with frying much bigger fish recently, so I don't know, maybe we'll forgive him on that one. In his review, he also talks about how he didn't understand the characters or the existence of Willy and Giblet, and yeah, when I watched Sheep Rampage's playthrough, I didn't understand either, and that's because neither YouTuber grabbed all of the tapes in their playthrough, and if Sheep Rampage did get the tapes, I was probably preoccupied doing something else, because when I watch streams, I'm usually doing some art or writing a script. But Markiplier did also say himself in his review at the end of that playthrough that he didn't collect all of the tapes. One thing that he also brought up was the lack of emotional depth and the inability to care about anyone in this chapter, and I wholeheartedly agree. Poppy Playtime has a history of bringing in new characters every chapter with no foreshadowing in any prior chapters, and most of the new characters are killed within the chapter they're introduced. It's really unfortunate, and Mob really are missing out on a lot of potential there because they are capable of writing really interesting characters. Take Mummy Longlegs, Catnap, Doughy, Poppy, Huggy, and the Prototype. There is lore for some of the minor characters like Yarnaby and Pianosaurus, but it's just a shame that these characters don't typically last long enough in this franchise to really truly be able to make a connection with them. When Chapter 4 was being teased and finally released, I was so excited to see Pianosaurus and Yarnaby in game, as they were my favorite characters from that chapter, and then I just watched them die. I literally cannot explain how disappointed I was when we first saw Pianosaurus in game, only for him to be killed so we could be introduced to Doughy, who we also kill later in that chapter. I'll literally never forget that. My son was a marketing ploy and an introduction tool. Markiplier did also mention the fact that none of these characters are foreshadowed in any of the prior chapters. We're always being introduced to a brand new cast every single time, and it is frustrating because it can be really hard to keep up with exactly what's happening. They haven't taken that critique on in Chapter 5 because they have been getting it since Chapter 3 at least, or at the very latest really, and we didn't see any improvement on that in Chapter 5. Maybe someone was introduced or teased a little bit earlier, my bad, I probably missed that, but we still haven't seen that improvement in Chapter 5. This may change for Chapter 6 because when Giblet takes us back to his base, you can see a little note somewhere on his workbench or somewhere, I can't really remember where you grab it from, but it has a list of characters or toys or people or something, a list of their names and some kind of debt or thing that Giblet owes them, and Doughy is listed there, crossed out, because, either that was fulfilled or, he's just dead now, and we know Doughy's dead, so it could either be that or the request was fulfilled or whatever. So maybe this might be Mob's subtle way at foreshadowing characters for the next chapter, but that's just something that I wanted to add in there. There was a really nice moment of raw emotion in Chapter 5 between Kissy and Huggy, but I bet you'll never guess what ruined it. One thing I totally agree with from Markiplier's review, and particularly his playthrough that I haven't seen anyone talking about, is the physical lore pieces you find in-game. If you're unfamiliar, a lot of the game's lore is hidden throughout the game as drawings, notes, diary logs, videotapes, experiment observations, all that kind of stuff. Markiplier continuously grows more and more annoyed as he finds hand-drawn notes and drawings that are supposed to emulate the artistic level of a child. But when you click on them to collect and read them, you read the information from a digital paragraph, not the actual collectible itself. I understand and support his frustrations in this regard. An artist went through the trouble of making that artwork. It would be nice if we could, actually have an option to magnify parts of the image and read the information that way, while also having the option to read the digitized version for more clarity. But at the moment, we don't have that, and it is a little silly that we don't. Now, let's debunk what he says about the chase sequences.
A chase sequence is not the time to introduce a new mechanic. I don't even care if it's something as innocuous like, decouple the train cars.
Because he mentions uncoupling the train cars, it's safe to assume that he's talking about the very last chase sequence at the end of the chapter. No new mechanics are introduced for this sequence, and if there were, I missed it. It utilizes techniques and mechanics we spend the entire chapter practicing. The last chase sequence is the test. It forces you into a stressful situation where you have to apply everything you've learned in the game to escape the threat. Maybe I'm missing something, but there's no new mechanic. Uncoupling the train cars involved using the pressure hand, which we have the entire chapter to practice using. So I don't really understand why he went on that tangent. In saying this, the chase sequences in this chapter were not perfect, and I can see why so many creators are getting so tired of them. I don't think there's an issue with failing chase sequences, or having them in the game. And yes, failing them does take the scariness out of it, but that is kind of what chase sequences are designed to do. Although the prototype one looked very poorly designed, and so did the Lily Lovebraids one. And take this with a grain of salt because I watch these, I don't play them. I do think we could have gone without Lily Lovebraid's chase scene altogether, as I do agree that this chapter was very heavily reliant on chase sequences and the reveal of the prototype. Now that I've broken down his critiques and held them up to the source material, it's time to end the video and conclude my thoughts around his statement. Poppy Playtime is not a bad game, and Chapter 5 is not as bad as what he's saying. I think that Markiplier's lack of preparation for the chapter, and the fact that he is so disinterested in playing the game the way it's intended to be played, is more a reflection of his personal taste toward games than a reflection of mob entertainment like people have been saying it is. Poppy Playtime's style of gameplay isn't gonna be for everyone, and that's okay. There's a reason I watch people play this game and I don't play it myself. There is never going to be a single piece of media that won't have some sort of critique. There is never going to be a game that pleases everyone. I think it's just important for people to do their own research and analysis if they agree or disagree on a subject with someone, and it's important in a community to be able to respect other people's opinions. I don't think that Markiplier's critiques were invalid, because I can see why he has issues with the chapter and why he doesn't want to play the next one, but I do think that not all of the issues he had were because of mob. There are things mob needs to improve on, such as their overkilling issue, how regular severe bugs are, and the excessive use of chase sequences that take the opportunity for slightly different gameplay and storytelling techniques away. I hope they don't drag the story out too long though, but I do hope that we get another 1 or 2 chapters to tie the bow, and I genuinely can't wait to see how the next chapter unfolds. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you for sticking around until the end. The dedication means a lot. Oh, and a very special thanks to my first Ko-Fi member, Glitterguts. If you would like to be mentioned at the end of all of my videos, I do have another one in the making. It'll be releasing around Digital Circus time. Then you can subscribe to my monthly membership on Ko-Fi. You'll also get sketchbook scans and exclusive discounts to my upcoming shop, which is theoretically going to open late March to early April. It's $6 a month for the subscription, or you can just donate however much you like in the free donation spot. You can donate 1 cent, 2 cents, $3, it's up to you. Any donation really means a lot and helps me fuel my boba addiction. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, take care of yourself, don't abstract when the next amazing Digital Circus episode comes out, and I'll see you in the next one.